Moving on to the next segment of today's show, it's time to talk about which a lot of people consider to be the game of the day on Sunday afternoon, the CBS 425 game, a rematch of the AFC divisional playoffs as the Cleveland Browns took on the Kansas City Chiefs. And this was a phenomenal football game. Back and forth, Cleveland got off to a really good lead. Kansas City, though, ends up winning the game 33-29. And there are a couple different angles to look at this game, right? I think if you're a Cleveland Browns fan, there are plenty of reasons to be optimistic even though you lost. I think that even in a loss, the Browns showed that they're going to be a team that wins a tremendous amount of football games throughout the season. They know that against most teams, not named the Kansas City Chiefs, they have a really good formula in terms of running the football with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt behind that offensive line, which I do believe is still the best offensive line in football. Odell Beckham Jr. didn't even play. Their defense, I think, looked solid at times with Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward and some of the other additions they made. But the problem is this. When you're facing a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, a lot of people will like to say that the way to beat them is to just run the ball and keep Patrick Mahomes off of the field and do whatever you can to just take advantage of the time of possession. Here's my issue with that strategy, though. When you are a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, we know what this Chiefs team is known for. They can strike at any time. I will never forget that playoff game against the Houston Texans when they were down 24-0, and in a snap before halftime of that game, all of a sudden that game was tied. The Chiefs ran away from it from there, and they were just a tremendous team. All 4 games during their Super Bowl title run, they were trailing at one point, and still somehow, some way, they found a way to hoist the Lombardi Trophy. And when you're going up against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, no matter how many points you have a lead, you are never able to count them out of the game. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs offense as a unit is the best unit in the NFL. When you combine an elite and a generational head coach like Andy Reid with a once-in-a-generation type talent at quarterback with Patrick Mahomes, and then the weapons of Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, that is just a group that not many other teams in the NFL can stop. And I think as time goes on, those 3 are making a case to be one of the best triplets in NFL history on the offensive side of the ball. Patrick Mahomes is now 11-0 in the month of September with 35 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. That is just an absurd stat. A couple things I wanted to get deep into this game, though. Cleveland played well, and I think Cleveland is going to be a very good football team. They are my prediction to win the AFC North. I actually predicted that for the second year in a row, Cleveland and Kansas City are going to face off in the playoffs this year, but instead of facing off in the AFC divisional round, I predicted it to happen in the AFC championship game, because once again, 1-53, I think Cleveland is actually one of the most talented teams in the NFL, and they're a complete team. I cannot give Kevin Stefanski enough credit for the job that he has been able to do since arriving in Cleveland and getting the Browns to the playoffs his first year, and the fact that last year in that playoff game at Heinz Field against the Pittsburgh Steelers, when he was out with COVID, the Browns were still able to find a way to beat their division rival on the road in a playoff game. That is just a situation and a spot that many Cleveland Browns teams over the last couple of years, they just flat out would not be able to get the job done. And somehow, some way, Cleveland did it. And I think this year, they return a majority of that team. They're going to be able to win a lot of football games. But my problem with Cleveland is this. We saw that late in this game, even though Cleveland played a great first half, they were winning the whole first half, and there were many people, including myself, that were saying just how great Kevin Stefanski's game plan was, right? I loved how early in this game, Cleveland was able to come out aggressive with some moxie. They were going for 2-point conversions after Kansas City penalties after their first touchdown. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, they were all running the ball. Baker Mayfield was swinging it down the field. Cleveland looked good to start off this game. But I think when you look at Baker Mayfield, he is not a bad quarterback. I think you could win with him at quarterback to a certain extent. He is a guy that Kevin Stefanski and the Cleveland Brown coaching staff knows they need to script the game for him. And in the second half, when everyone in the building knew that Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs was throwing the ball and he was going to try whatever he could to get the Kansas City Chiefs back in the game, it still didn't even matter. Cleveland still could not stop him, as with one flick of the wrist, the Chiefs were able to go right down the field to Tyreek Hill, the long touchdown. Mahomes hit Travis Kelce for some other touchdowns as well, and Kansas City ended up getting the win. Baker Mayfield and the Browns had one more opportunity left before the game ended. On that last drive, we know what happened. Mike Hughes, the former Minnesota Viking, ends up getting the interception, and just like that, the Kansas City Chiefs are 1-0 to start the season. Cleveland Browns 0-1. And once again, I think for the first 3 quarters of this game, Cleveland played for their personnel about as good as they could play. They were running the football. Their offensive line was doing work against the Kansas City Chiefs defensive line that I actually called out during the game, saying that this Chiefs unit has way too much talent to be this bad. I know Frank Clark didn't play. Tyrann Mathieu didn't play for the Chiefs as well. But I think from a big picture perspective, that is exactly what makes this Kansas City Chiefs team so good and so tough to beat, is that even during a day in the first half where they didn't play that good of football, Patrick Mahomes looked a little bit overwhelmed against that Cleveland Brown defense, the way they were getting to him, the way that they were shutting down really all of his options. And still, in the second half, when everyone in the building knew Patrick Mahomes was going to be throwing, the Chiefs were still able to put up plenty of points, and they were still able to get the win and get the job done. This is just such a tough team to beat, because even when they don't play their best game, Cleveland, a team that showed up to Arrowhead, played a really good game, they were not able to be beaten. And I think right now it is clear to say, when we saw how the Buffalo Bills looked in Week 1, a team that a lot of people predicted to be finally, this is the year where Kansas City gets stopped in the AFC. Chiefs have been to 3 straight AFC championship games. They have been to 2 straight Super Bowls. There are a lot of people that are saying, okay, this is finally going to be the year that Kansas City gets dethroned in the AFC. Well, to be honest with you, when you look at their threats, Buffalo didn't look like a threat. Cleveland didn't look like that big of a threat, and I understand the Browns almost won, but I can't expect Kansas City and their offense to be shut down in the first half again like they were against Cleveland. It is too potent. It is too dynamic. And right now, I'm not even kidding, the number 1 threat to the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC might be in their division, and it might just be the Los Angeles Chargers, because the way Justin Herbert played Sunday against a really tough defense in the Washington football team, that was a game where the Chargers really relied on their young star quarterback to make all of the timely throws, and guess what? He delivered. It was a super impressive effort, and Week 3 will be when Justin Herbert, Brandon Staley, and the Los Angeles Chargers head to Arrowhead Stadium to take on the Chiefs. I can't wait. They will be on the road against Baltimore next week. They will then take on the Philadelphia Eagles, Buffalo Bills. The Chiefs are going to have a lot of big games, and we'll see how that ends up for them starting Sunday Night Football against the Ravens. If you're a Brown fan, I still think your team wins the AFC North. I still think your team still has a chance to be really good. Kevin Stefanski is one of the better head coaches in the league. I loved his game plan going into this game, but the problem is this. Kansas City is a once-in-a-generation type team. When you combine Andy Reid, a head coach that was elite in Philadelphia, but he just never had that once-in-a-generation type talent at quarterback. He did wonders with Donovan McNabb and Michael Vick and Alex Smith, and all of those guys were really good, but none of those guys had the top-notch potential and the top-notch talent that a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes has. And when you combine an elite offensive mind in Andy Reid with Mahomes and the weapons and the Chiefs' offensive line minus left tackle Orlando Brown. It was his first game in a Kansas City Chief uniform. Hopefully he'll improve, but I was so impressed with the right side of the Chiefs' offensive line between Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey and Lucas Niang. I think that unit on the right side could be one for Kansas City that gets the job done for years to come. And even when Cleveland had the perfect game plan, they made one mistake, fumbling the punt, and as soon as that happened, I said to myself, these are not the mistakes that you're going to be able to make against a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, because they know, especially in a situation where they've been down the whole game and they've been playing loose, and we know that Mahomes, it doesn't take much for him to get the team back in the game by just making a couple throws like he did to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Kansas City is just such a tough team to beat. They're such a tough team to game plan for, and I wanted to make myself clear. If you think the best way of beating the Chiefs is just running the football and keeping them off the field, I don't think it's going to work, because we know just how quickly Mahomes and this offense is able to strike. The best way for you to beat the Kansas City Chiefs is to somehow, some way, have a quarterback that is able to go step for step and punch for punch with Mahomes, or just have a defense like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did in the Super Bowl that could just get after him at any moment, at any time. And we saw just how overwhelmed Mahomes looked in that game, but to be honest, it wasn't even his fault. I think any quarterback would have just been flustered by the amount of elite pressure the Buccaneers were able to get in that Super Bowl game. But once again, to recap, I think Cleveland played about as well as you could, but at the end of the day, it didn't even matter, because the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium with this quarterback are just so good. They're that tough to beat, even when you come out with a good game plan, and even when they don't necessarily play their best game.